What is up, Blue Jays Nation? Welcome back to Jays Central, where we break down everything happening with your Toronto Blue Jays. Today we've got some serious roster talk that could shake up this entire organization, and you're going to want to hear every single detail. Before we get rolling, do me a huge favor and smash that like button right now. Seriously, it takes half a second and it helps this channel massively. And drop a comment below telling me your honest thoughts on what we're about to discuss. Are you team trade or team keep? Let's dive in. So here's the situation that's developing in Toronto, and it's one that the front office absolutely has to address before spring training gets into full swing. José Berríos finds himself in an interesting position after all the moves this organization made during the offseason. Now, let me be clear about something right off the bat. Berríos has been nothing short of reliable during his time wearing a Blue Jays uniform. This isn't about his performance or his value as a pitcher. The guy has been solid, dependable, and exactly what you want from a veteran starter. But here's where things get complicated. When Toronto went out and signed Dylan Cease to that massive contract, the rotation dynamic shifted significantly. Then they brought in Cody Ponce on a multi-year deal, and suddenly the depth chart started looking very different. What does this mean for Berríos? Well, if things stay as they are right now, there's a real possibility he starts the season working out of the bullpen as a long reliever. Think about that for a second. A guy who's been a consistent starter for years, now potentially coming out of the pen because of roster construction. Is that the best use of his talents? Probably not. Would another team value him as a starter? Absolutely. That's why there's serious conversation happening about finding Berríos a new home where he can continue doing what he does best, eating innings, and giving his team quality starts every fifth day. If you think the Blue Jays should explore trade options for Berríos, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you think they could get in return. Now, there's another layer to this whole situation. Remember Bo Bichette? Yeah, the guy who left for New York and took his 18 home runs and 94 RBIs with him. That offensive production doesn't just magically replace itself. Toronto has a genuine hole in their lineup that needs to be addressed. And it's not something you can just ignore and hope some bench player breaks out. Championship teams have middle-of-the-order production, and right now the Blue Jays are lacking in that department. So what's the solution? How do you solve two problems at once? That's where things get really interesting, and that's what we need to break down. A potential trade scenario has been floating around that would kill two birds with one stone, finding Berríos a new opportunity while simultaneously addressing that offensive gap left by Bichette's departure. Before we get into the specifics, make sure you've subscribed to this channel with notifications turned on because we're going to be covering every development as this story unfolds. Here's what's been proposed, and I want you to really think about this as I lay it out. The trade would involve the New York Yankees, which already makes it spicy because of the Bichette connection. Toronto would be sending out José Berríos, Anthony Santander, the promising young pitcher Ricky Tiedemann, and $10 million in cash. That's a significant package, no question about it. You're giving up a proven starter, a solid outfielder, a high-upside prospect, and money to sweeten the deal. What would the Blue Jays be getting back? Two pieces that could change the entire complexion of this roster: Jazz Chisholm Jr. and Spencer Jones. Now, if you're not familiar with these names or their potential impact, stay with me because this is where it gets exciting. Let me know in the comments right now if you've heard of Spencer Jones before, because this kid is going to be a problem for opposing pitchers. Jazz Chisholm Jr. is the headliner in this hypothetical deal, and for good reason. This guy can flat out play baseball. We're talking about someone who just came off his best offensive season, and the numbers back it up. In 130 games last year, Chisholm launched 31 home runs, drove in 80 runs, collected 112 hits, and stole 31 bases. Read those stats again. 31 homers and 31 steals. That's elite production in today's game. His slash line sat at 242, 332 for 81. Now, some people might look at that batting average and have concerns, but you have to understand modern baseball analytics. His weighted runs created plus, which measures overall offensive value, came in at 126. That's significantly above league average. For context, Bichette posted a 134 WRC plus last season. You're not losing much offensive value at all, and in some areas, specifically power and speed, you're actually upgrading. Think about what Chisholm brings to a lineup. He's a legitimate dual threat who forces defenses to account for multiple dimensions of his game. When he's on base, pitchers have to worry about him stealing. When he's at the plate, they know he can take you deep to any part of the park. That kind of pressure creates opportunities for the hitters around him. The entire lineup benefits when you have that type of dynamic player in the middle of your order. Drop a comment and tell me where you'd bat Chisholm in the Blue Jays lineup. But wait, there's more to this deal. Spencer Jones is the other piece coming to Toronto, and this is where you're investing in future production. Jones is a left-handed outfielder who absolutely crushed it in the minor leagues last season. We're talking about 35 home runs across different levels. 35. That's not a typo. This kid has legitimate power potential, and he's exactly the type of prospect that can develop into an everyday player at the major league level. Adding Jones gives Toronto an interesting option. Maybe he's ready to contribute immediately, or maybe he needs a little more seasoning in AAA before getting the call. Either way, you're acquiring a high-ceiling talent who could be part of the core moving forward. Smart organizations are always thinking about both the present and the future, and Jones represents that future upside. If you like the idea of adding a power-hitting outfield prospect, show some love with a like right now. Let's flip this around and look at it from the Yankees' perspective, because for any trade to happen, both sides need to see value. Why would New York do this deal? Well, according to recent reports, the Yankees are actively searching for a right-handed hitting outfielder. They've been linked to various free agents, but none of them really move the needle like Anthony Santander could. Santander gives them exactly what they're looking for: a proven bat who can play multiple outfield positions and also serve as a designated hitter when needed. The versatility factor is huge. Baseball is a long season, and having players who can slot into different positions keeps your roster flexible. Santander can handle left field, right field, or DH duties depending on matchups and rest needs. Plus, he's a switch hitter, which provides even more lineup construction options for the Yankees. When you're building a championship roster, that kind of flexibility is invaluable. Welcome back to Jays Central. If you're just joining us, make sure you hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think about this potential blockbuster trade. We're breaking down a deal that could reshape both the Blue Jays and Yankees rosters, and we're just getting started. Let's keep this rolling. So we were talking about why the Yankees would be interested in this trade package, and there's actually more to it than just acquiring Santander. José Berríos becomes a critical piece of this equation when you look at New York's current pitching situation. Here's what most casual fans might not realize. The Yankees are dealing with some significant injury concerns in their rotation right now. Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon are both expected to start the season on the injured list. That's two of your top starters unavailable when games start counting. When you're missing rotation pieces like that, you need insurance. You need someone who can step in and give you quality innings without skipping a beat. That's exactly what Berríos provides. Look at his track record over the past decade. He's made at least 30 starts in 7 of his 10 major league seasons, including the last 5 consecutive years. That kind of durability is rare, and it's incredibly valuable when you're trying to navigate a long season with injury questions hanging over your rotation. If the Yankees bring in Berríos, they can take their time bringing Cole and Rodon back to full health. They don't have to rush anyone or push pitchers before they're ready. Having that veteran presence who can anchor the middle or back end of your rotation while your aces recover. That's championship-level roster construction. It's the kind of move that might not make headlines, but wins you games in April and May when everyone else is scrambling. Comment below if you think Berríos would thrive in pinstripes. Now let's talk about Ricky Tiedemann, because he's a fascinating part of this proposed trade. Tiedemann is one of the top pitching prospects in baseball right now, a young left-hander with serious upside. The Yankees have always valued controllable, young pitching talent, and adding Tiedemann would give them another potential rotation piece for years to come. He's not quite ready for prime time yet, but he's close. Really close. For New York, acquiring Tiedemann is about building for both now and later. Maybe he helps them this season. Maybe it's next year, but either way you're adding a high-ceiling arm to your organization. The Yankees have several young pitchers who are approaching major league readiness, and adding Tiedemann to that mix creates even more depth and competition. That's how you maintain success year after year, constantly replenishing your talent pipeline. Hit that like button if you appreciate front offices that think long-term. The $10 million in cash that Toronto would include might seem like a small detail, but it actually matters quite a bit. When you're taking on the salaries of both Santander and Berríos, that money helps offset the immediate financial impact. Berríos alone is making $19 million this season, so the cash helps balance the books. It's these kinds of details that make or break trade negotiations. Both teams need to feel like they're getting fair value, and the financial component is always part of that calculation. So let's break down what New York would be getting in total. They'd acquire a right-handed hitting outfielder in Santander who fills an immediate need. They'd get a durable starting pitcher in Berríos who can stabilize their rotation during a crucial period. They'd add a high-upside pitching prospect in Tiedemann who could be part of their future. And they'd receive cash to help with the financial burden. When you lay it all out like that, you can see why this trade makes sense from their perspective. But we're a Blue Jays channel, so let's focus on what really matters. Is this good for Toronto? That's the question you should be asking yourself right now, and I want to hear your answer in the comments. Would you pull the trigger on this deal if you were running the Blue Jays front office? There are legitimate arguments on both sides, and that's what makes this so interesting to debate. On one hand, you're giving up quite a bit. Berríos has been reliable and consistent. Santander provides veteran presence and solid production. Tiedemann could develop into a frontline starter. That's not an insignificant price to pay. But on the other hand, you're addressing your biggest need, replacing Bichette's production, by bringing in a dynamic player like Chisholm who might actually be an upgrade in certain areas. Plus you're adding Spencer Jones, who gives you another power bat to develop. The key question is whether Chisholm can replicate or exceed what Bichette brought to the table. Let's compare them honestly. Bichette gave you consistency and contact hitting. He wasn't a huge home run threat, but he got on base and drove in runs. Chisholm is more volatile. The batting average is lower, the strikeouts are higher, but the power and speed combination is elite. You're trading stability for upside and dynamism. Different styles, different value propositions. From a statistical standpoint, their WRC plus numbers are remarkably similar. Bichette at 134, Chisholm at 126. That's a difference of 8 points, which isn't nothing but isn't massive either. The real separation comes in the counting stats. Chisholm hit 13 more home runs than Bichette last season. 13. In a division where games are often decided by one swing of the bat, that power difference could be huge. Make sure you've liked this video if you're learning something new about these players. The stolen base element can't be overlooked either. Chisholm swiped 31 bags last year, which puts tremendous pressure on opposing pitchers and catchers. Every time he reaches base, the defense has to account for him. That changes pitch selection, disrupts timing, and creates scoring opportunities. Bichette wasn't a base-stealing threat in the same way, so you're adding a dimension to your offense that didn't exist before. Let's talk about Spencer Jones for a minute, because I don't want his value in this deal to get lost. 35 home runs in the minor leagues is absurd production. Yes, it's the minors, and there's always a transition period to big league pitching, but raw power like that doesn't just disappear. If Jones can even hit 25 homers at the major league level while playing adequate defense, you've got yourself a legitimate everyday player. That's incredible value in a trade. The beauty of acquiring Jones is that there's no pressure for him to contribute immediately. If Toronto wanted to start him in AAA and let him refine his approach against top-level pitching, they could do that. Or if he forces his way onto the roster with a monster spring training, you've got options. Flexibility is a luxury in baseball, and Jones provides that. Drop a comment and predict how many home runs Jones hits in his first full major league season. Now here's something worth considering: roster construction and team chemistry. When you trade away multiple pieces and bring in new players, you're changing the entire dynamic of your clubhouse. Berríos and Santander are established veterans who have relationships with teammates and understand the organization. Bringing in Chisholm and potentially Jones means integrating new personalities and playing styles. Sometimes that works seamlessly, sometimes it takes time. Chemistry matters, especially over a 162-game grind. Chisholm brings energy and athleticism that could inject life into the lineup. Some teams need that spark, that guy who plays with an edge and brings intensity every day. If the Blue Jays clubhouse was feeling stale or needed a jolt of excitement, Chisholm could be exactly what the doctor ordered. But if things were already clicking and everyone was comfortable, disrupting that could be risky. It's impossible to know from the outside, but it's definitely something the front office would consider. We're in the final stretch here at Jays Central, and I need you to do me a favor before we wrap this up. If you've enjoyed this breakdown and learned something about this potential trade, smash that like button right now. And leave a comment with your final verdict. Should the Blue Jays make this trade or walk away? Let's bring this home. So we've laid out all the pieces of this proposed deal. We've examined it from Toronto's perspective and New York's perspective. We've compared the players involved and talked about the implications for both rosters. Now comes the big question. Would this actually happen? And maybe more importantly, should it happen? Let's be realistic for a second. Trades of this magnitude, involving multiple major league players, prospects, and cash, are incredibly complicated to pull off. You're not just negotiating between two front offices. You have to consider player contracts, salary cap implications, prospect evaluations, medical records, and about 100 other factors that fans never see. The fact that something makes sense on paper doesn't mean it makes sense in reality. Both organizations would need to be absolutely convinced that this deal makes them better. The Yankees would need to believe that Santander, Berríos, and Tiedemann address their needs better than any alternative option available. Toronto would need to be confident that Chisholm and Jones provide more value than keeping Berríos, Santander, and Tiedemann. That's a high bar to clear on both sides, which is why blockbuster trades are rare. Here's my honest assessment. This trade makes a ton of sense for Toronto if you're looking purely at addressing the Bichette-sized hole in the lineup. Chisholm gives you the power and speed combination that's hard to find anywhere in baseball. You're getting a proven big league player who's entering his prime years and just posted elite numbers. That's not speculation or projection, that's established production. If filling that offensive void is the top priority, Chisholm checks every box. The Spencer Jones piece sweetens the deal considerably. You're not just making a win-now move, you're also investing in the future. That's smart roster management. Too many teams get caught up in the present and forget to build for tomorrow. By acquiring a prospect with Jones's power potential, Toronto hedges their bets and maintains organizational depth. Even if this trade doesn't work out perfectly in the short term, having Jones in the system provides long-term value. Comment below if you think Jones becomes a star or just a solid role player. But, and this is important, you're giving up a lot to get there. Berríos has been everything you could ask for in a veteran starter. Trading him creates another question mark in the rotation, especially if the team brings in another big-name starter like some analysts predict. Tiedemann represents serious upside, the kind of left-handed pitching prospect that could anchor your rotation for the next decade. Giving him up is a tough pill to swallow. Santander is the wild card in this equation. He's a solid player who provides value, but he's also somewhat replaceable compared to the other pieces involved. If Toronto is confident they can replace his production internally or through a smaller move, then trading him becomes easier to justify. But if they're counting on him to be a significant contributor, losing him hurts. From the Yankees' perspective, I think they'd jump on this deal in a heartbeat. They're getting exactly what they need, an outfielder who fits their requirements, rotation help while their aces recover, and a high-upside pitching prospect. The financial aspect works for them with the cash inclusion. If I'm running the Yankees and this offer lands on my desk, I'm strongly considering it. Hit that like button if you think the Yankees would accept this trade. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, likelihood. The original report that proposed this trade even acknowledged that it's highly unlikely to actually happen, even though it makes sense for both sides. Why? Because baseball trades are incredibly difficult to complete. Every team values their own players more than the market does. Every team thinks they're getting the short end of the stick. Egos get involved, negotiations break down, and deals fall apart. The Blue Jays might look at this and say Tiedemann is untouchable. The Yankees might decide they're not comfortable taking on Berríos' contract. Either side could get cold feet about the prospect evaluation or medical reports. 1,000 things could derail this before it ever gets close to completion. That's just the reality of trade discussions in professional sports. But let's say it did happen. Let's imagine we wake up tomorrow and this trade is official. How would you feel as a Blue Jays fan? Would you be excited about Chisholm and Jones joining the organization? Or would you be upset about losing Berríos, Santander, and Tiedemann? This is what makes being a fan so fun. We all have different opinions based on what we value and how we see the game. Personally, I think if Toronto could get this deal done, they should seriously consider it. Replacing Bichette's production was always going to require a significant move, and Chisholm represents one of the better available options to fill that role. He's young, talented, and just had a breakout season. Sometimes you have to take risks to win championships, and acquiring a player of Chisholm's caliber qualifies as a worthwhile risk. The Spencer Jones element makes it even more palatable. You're not just mortgaging the future for a one-year rental. You're adding a legitimate prospect who could be mashing home runs in a Blue Jays uniform for the next decade. That long-term value matters, especially for an organization that wants to compete year after year, not just have one magical season. What about the potential downsides? The biggest concern is giving up Tiedemann. High-upside pitching prospects are incredibly valuable, and they're also incredibly rare. If he develops into a frontline starter for the Yankees while Toronto is struggling to find reliable pitching, this trade could haunt the organization for years. That's the nightmare scenario that keeps general managers up at night. But you can't make decisions based on fear. You have to evaluate what helps you win now while also protecting your future. It's a balancing act, and there's no perfect answer. Some trades work out beautifully, others become disasters. The teams that consistently win are the ones who make more good decisions than bad ones over time. Drop a comment with your prediction. Does this trade happen or not? Here's what I want you to think about as we close this out. The Blue Jays are in a unique position right now. They've got a championship-caliber roster in many areas, but they also have some holes to fill. The front office could play it safe, make minor moves, and hope everything clicks. Or they could be aggressive, swing for the fences, and try to land impact players who change the trajectory of the season. This proposed trade represents the aggressive approach. It's bold, it's risky, and it requires conviction that Chisholm and Jones provide more value than what you're giving up. Not every front office would have the stomach for a deal this big, but the ones who do are often the ones hoisting championship trophies in November. Only time will tell if this trade materializes or if it remains nothing more than an interesting proposal that never comes to fruition. But regardless of what happens, it gives us something to talk about, debate, and analyze. That's what makes following baseball during the off-season so engaging. The possibilities are endless. Thanks for watching Jays Central. If you made it all the way to the end, you're a true Blue Jays fan, and I appreciate you. Make sure you've liked this video, drop a comment with your final thoughts on this trade, and subscribe for more Blue Jays content all season long. Let's go Blue Jays!